Hey y'all, welcome back if you're returning to our channel. So I always say that, I say that this is our channel because obviously I'm the one doing the talking, but it's so much better when this is a conversation and when you jump in and we talk back and forth in the comments and engage. I think there's like plenty of places where people are talking at each other and not to each other, and so this is our little space, our little corner to have a chat. And y'all, now, you know that, or you don't know, but if you know me, you know I have thoughts on all the things. And there are so many things to talk about. And so one of the things that I really believe in, that I say all the time, is that at its best, platforms like this are places where you can come to learn things, to engage, to grow. But they're also places where there's a whole lot of noise and a lot of things which are contributing to misinformation and disinformation and just like a hot mess, right? So, listen, I'm not one to ignore what's really going on in our culture, and I'm a keen observer of society and very analytical. And so, I live in Washington, D.C. There, I'm an attorney in public service in Washington, D.C. And so there's no way for me to ever escape all of the things that are happening, and I wouldn't want to anyways, because I think that we're here to actually be impactful. Like, that's why we're here on this earth. And so this has been a wild week here in Washington, D.C., but really it's been a wild year, and really, if we're honest, it's been a wild 243 years which is how old our country is. And so I thought today we'd talk about what the title says, like, can we all just get along? The short answer is like maybe, right? Like, unity and dissension and dissent are really tricky topics, and they're ones that we need to talk about, because one of the first things I said when I came back in my first video, if you look back after like my 2-year 3-year hiatus, was the direction that we're going is that we're savaging each other, and that a house divided against itself can't stand. Eventually you get to a point where you've like torn each other to shreds, and external people don't even have to do anything, external actual enemies, because you've defeated yourself. And that's really the direction in some respects we're going. But I also have kind of a different perspective on things. I think people are like, it's never been this bad, and I'm like, well, that's not true. The United States of America has survived bloody civil war, like a literal civil war, multiple other wars, just some really horrific things. And while I am not obtuse here, it is a tough time and a bad time. It's also I think it's like our generational moment. It's our opportunity to step up and to really do some of the like hard individual and collective work of figuring out how, if we want to help to be a part of advancing our country, or are we going to let this thing go? And it is like, seems very dramatic. And I think a lot of times when you don't live in a place like DC, or you choose to you can choose to curate your experience of life. And that might mean you don't have to have these conversations or see these things. But if you choose to engage and lean in, like, you get the benefit of the work. Like, it's hard work to be a responsible member of a society. It means really digging into relationship, and that is not easy. So I thought we would talk about it, right? Because a lot of what we're seeing is, we talk about polarization, which means like we're really separate, like we're at separate poles, the North Pole, the South Pole, right? We're oppositional, exerting this oppositional force. And I'm not sure that I believe that's the case. I don't know that we're as polarized as people think, because realistically, most people are right here in the middle. And we have a lot of things we agree upon, but what you choose to focus on seems magnified. And I'm not really one to I'm pretty sort of like, let's just deal with things as they are. So I really am not the one to sit here and be like, pretend everything is great. I think that's something that people want to do. Like, you see the people who are ignoring what's going on, and you're like, No, see, like ignoring something doesn't actually make it go away. Like if I shove a bunch of things in a closet, doesn't mean they're not in the closet. It just means everything's shoved in the closet. And eventually, you know, if you ever want to like use all your spaces, you're gonna have to go and clean the crap out of the closet. So we're just cleaning out the crap of the closet. I think we talk about times as like being really dark and heavy and all those things, and that's true, but like there's a whole lot of light, you know, and one of the things about light is it's an antiseptic, right? Like it is a disinfectant. It does bring into focus things that are infected and you know, has the ability to help heal them. And so I just really want to talk about sort of it's not even really about politics. It's about what does it even mean for us to be united? Because we are called the United States of America, right? But like we never actually define terms. Like I'm pretty nerdy. I like to go and look up what things mean a lot, because I think oftentimes people throw around terms. Like I've heard people talk a lot about like socialism and these things. I'm not trying to be like funny here. I'm an Ivy League educated attorney, and if you ask me to name the tenets of socialism, I 100% promise you I couldn't. I could look them up, but I couldn't name them. And yet you have people like throwing around these like very large concepts that are very sort of separating in the nature. They're being thrown as epithets, and I'm like, come on now, you don't even know you couldn't even define what you're talking about. So I really believe that one of the things that breeds commonality is having a common definition, because part of it is like a game of telephone. We're talking about things, but we're talking like this. We're not even talking about the same thing. So I looked up a definition of what united even means, right? Because I mean, maybe we have differing ideas, but according to the Oxford Dictionary, which I love the Brits, it is, I'm looking down to look at it, joined together for a common purpose or by common feelings. I mean, that seems fair. That's like, that makes a lot of sense as a definition. But I asked the question, like, is that real? Like, these common purposes or common feelings, what are they as a collective, right? Like, because I think, you know, the first thing that I would say about why we seem very polarized is we haven't defined, at least very recently, and really dug into what is our common purpose, what are our common feelings? Because we're individualistic by nature. Like we really have gotten to the point where it's like, look at me, and social media and all those things breed that. The more people look at you, the more you're looking at yourself, and the less you're looking at everybody in the collective. And the less communal we are by nature, and the more individual, the less it's easy to define what our common purpose is. And so, you know, we talk a lot about our founding ideals and like what we're based on, and you know, some of these we know, but we don't talk about a lot, right? So in the Declaration of Independence, it says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, which means they're obvious, right? These are the ones that I think that we really have to figure out if we agree on. That one, all men are created equal, okay? Men, women, humanity is all equal, the principle of equality. That they're endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, right? Like these are rights which should not be violated. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are so broad because like within that you're like, okay, freedom, pursuit of happiness, like unchecked freedom is tyranny and chaos and things like what we saw at the Capitol, right? Like this idea that like my freedom allows me to do whatever I want. And if I feel like you've in any way infringed on my freedom or my rights, I get to act out. That ain't it, y'all. Like we can't function like that. That's not a functional way to exist or to cooperate or to move forward as a culture. So I would say this, like white supremacy, we got to talk about that, right? And I'm not going to get deeply into that in this video because like that's a whole other topic. But a lot of what we're seeing play out right now is this idea that we say we believe that all men are created equal, and that's one of our foundational common principles that unites us, but we don't really believe it. We don't, because as soon as there's a request to share power, it seems like you're taking from me if we have to share. And I don't, it really isn't actually like that. It isn't that there's this like finite amount of power, and if you get something and you can't share with me, otherwise I'm taking from you. And so I think that's one of the things like we really need to dig into, because it is kind of destroying us, but it also is built into our fabric. The other thing is, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are so broad, and those ones we can probably agree on. Although what it looks like in the context of that to actually live it out is totally different. I think instead of focusing on these like political concepts, if we thought about ourselves as relational beings, like we're all in relationship with each other, even if we don't want to be. Like I don't necessarily choose to be in relationship, and definitely wouldn't choose to be in relationship with some of you people. No offense, but we are. And there are some basic principles that we apply to relationship that if we started applying culturally, we might see some better outcomes, right? Like the fact of the matter is, like, let's be honest, we actually have bad relationships too. And so maybe that's part of the problem, that like, if you look at kind of our families, our friendships, our marriages, our dating relationships, they're not good. Pandemic year, right? Like quarantine year has revealed a lot. Like the number of people that I've seen get divorced or break up has been significant, because when forced to sit with ourselves and each other, and this is even really true of myself, like when forced to sit with each other, it's like our relationships are bad. They're not foundationally good, right? Like we have a lot of stuff we're bringing to the table, our own stuff too, like our own traumas and issues and all these things are informing our relationships. And so how can we collectively live relationally when we break it down to the smaller bits? Like our personal relationships are bad. And so, I mean, I think we might disagree on what makes good relationships, but I think some of it's basic, right? Like one is the foundation of truth, and we have to start telling the truth collectively and culturally. And that means like being honest about our roots, that we are a supremacist society. It's just a fact. Like this is not something to argue about. This is not an accusation. It's just how it is. Like when you found your culture on a hierarchy, as ours was in our country and most other countries, like Britain, Mother Britain, okay, you colonized everybody, okay, and on, then there's going to be hierarchies, and that doesn't just go away because we say it goes away or time changes. It's built into who we are. And then so the foundation, I think, there is just telling the truth, admitting it, and not seeing it as an accusation, but just as a place to work from, and a springboard for it, to seeing how we can move forward. So I think truth is one of the things. Like we have to stop lying to ourselves and lying to each other. The other thing is like the biggest thing, truthfully, like, well, there's communication, right? Like we are really bad at communication. We talk at each other, not to each other. I mean, even now, obviously I'm like talking at you. And an essential element of good relationship is good communication. Like we've got to work on not, first of all, learning how to listen to each other and really hear each other, right? Listening and hearing are two different things. Part of it is most of our conversations we're like sort of listening, but just enough to formulate like whatever our response is going to be, and not really listening to hear or for understanding or comprehension. I'm not saying you have to agree with everything, but we need to learn to listen, right? Hear and not think everything is about us, because part of it is we're centering ourselves all the time, and that's not left or right or black or white or Latino or anything. That's just people. Like we tend to be very selfish and center ourselves in conversations instead of being like, okay, I'm sort of almost take myself out of the equation and how what you're saying affects me, instead just hear what you're saying neutrally. So that's a big one, I think. And also teamwork. Like we're not opponents. Like you are not my opponent. Even if I disagree, if you're in the left, the right, the middle, the back, the front, if you are southern, northern, whatever, you're not my opponent. You are my teammate, because we are all in this thing together for real. Like these aren't just catchphrases, they're actual things. Like we have to be pulling in the same direction. So I consider you all my teammates, And that means we have to work together as a team. Again, that goes back to having the common goal, which is not for me to do better than you and to beat you, but that we all like don't sink the ship of our democracy or like our cultures, because I don't think that that's what we're aiming for. What inherent in all of that is like the ability to learn to dissent and disagree. You know, I think that we can disagree on almost anything, and that really is okay. It is okay. Like, I don't have a problem. I can sit down with someone who like is racist and be okay, and listen to what they have to say, and I could vehemently disagree. I do believe that there are some things we can't disagree on, like those common purposes and principles I talked about, like the main one being like we have to be able to agree in the fundamental worth of humanity and the equality of people, right? That each person is infinitely valuable and equal in their humanity. All the other things like we can talk about, but if we don't agree on that, then I'm not going to try and get along like that. Then we're just going to move along, right? But if we can start there, then I think that that's a good foundation where it's like these details we might not agree on, but we have to learn to find commonality, not fake commonality, because that's BS. You know, we're like super fake. I lived in the South for a while, and like those folk, see, like I'm from the North where it's like you just say whatever you think, and it's like, listen, I hate your dress, you know, and like I don't really like you, but we have to work together and fine. In the South, it's like, oh, you look beautiful, and then right behind her back, like, oh, that thing is so ugly, and you're like, huh? So, you know, I'm not like someone who's like, let's lie to each other, and like that's what creates peace, you know, because a lot of people calling for peace now, and I'm like, no, you want comfort. Comfort's not the same thing as peace. Peace is something that's rooted and grounded in truth. The biggest thing of all, people love to throw on MLK quotes, but usually it's just like lazy quoting where, you know, you're like, please stop quoting Martin Luther King in situations where violence has occurred and stuff, and you be talking about how, you know, don't hate. Yes and no, right? Like, I'm not talking about selectively using MLK quotes, but there is a quote that everybody says, and I really do believe it's true, where he says, darkness can't drive out darkness, right? Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And so my largest principle, and I say it, is love. Love doesn't always mean liking each other. It doesn't mean getting along all the time. It's love. It's a concept, the most foundational concept for me as a Christian, and the way that I live my life. Despite how people see Christians, like people have really, you know, pooed the bed on who God is by the way we've presented Christianity. It's trash, and I'm really sorry, God. But it is a foundation of love where it's like everything that I do puts you first. Like it really does. It's I am most invested in your well-being. I will treat you how I want to be treated because I love you, right? I don't like you, right? Like I don't like white supremacists, but I will love you, right? Love doesn't look like going along to get along or lying to each other. Love is truth. Love is kind. It's long-suffering. It's patient. It's, you know, not self-serving. It serves the greater good. So, I mean, this is like such a big topic, and I could talk forever, but the reason I even wanted to do this is because I think we start by having the conversations and start thinking about this. Like, I think a lot of people are getting caught up in their feelings. Like, this is not the moment for the in your feelings challenge. I'm so sad, things are bad. Okay, I am all for people acknowledging their feelings, and like you need to process how you process and whatever, but it's kind of the work period, you know, and like if you spend too much time in your feelings and being like, I don't know what to do, that's an excuse to do nothing, okay? And I will not give you an excuse to do nothing. And so one of the things is at least starting to engage in the conversation, right? Get in the conversation, right? There's plenty of things on the interwebs that will tell you like, you know, ways that you can gauge on white supremacy or otherwise, and we can talk more about that. But this is more the larger thing of really just spending some time examining yourself, like, what do you believe is our common purpose and good, and what are barriers within yourself to creating the type of relationships as human beings that we want? Because people always say this, like start with your neighbor and things like that. And I do believe that that is to a certain extent true, that you start with you, and like we start these concentric circles out, hopefully like creating some ripples that create like a much, much better culture. We have to do something. Doing nothing is not an option. Doing nothing is doing something. Not even engaging in the conversation is doing something. Burying your head in the sand is doing something. Like, times are rough. They are not good. We have a lot of work to do, but I'm like very, like I'm a pragmatic optimist. And so like maybe like kind of Pollyanna-esque. So even though I'm like extremely logical and I see how things are, I really do fundamentally always believe like that it's just an opportunity. Like, it's an opportunity for us to like dig in and do better. I'm like excited about the times, and I think that probably would surprise people or seem odd to them, because some of the things that I say probably seem hard, but really it's because I'm like, no, guys, this is our generational moment. Like, we have an opportunity to really lurch forward, to lunge forward, to reach higher ideals, to bring us closer to ideals of, you know, equality, inclusivity, love, truth. We really, really do. And I think that we'll do it. I think we'll do it. But yeah, like we have to start talking about it. And so, and really talking and like digging in and doing the hard work. And so I'm really interested in your thoughts. Like, this is a very broad, and I think what this really will be is like an ongoing series or chats where we talk about these things, because that's what we do here. And so if I can even just add, like, you know, it's almost like me dropping a little pebble into a lake and you see the ripple effect. This is my offering. I'm the pebble. So yeah, so thanks for hanging with me here. And like, tell me what you think in the comments. What, like, you know, what do you think are some of the barriers? What do you think are common? Where are we at? Like, I do want to hear from you, and like, let's get talking. Let's get this thing right-sided. I really believe that we can. So thanks for hanging with me.